3 in the morning at a marina in Fort Lauderdale, a float switch clicking on in a dark bilge, discharge water pulsing over the side, shore power humming at the pedestal. That pump is not saving the boat. 4 boats sink in their slips for everyone that sinks underway. It has been hiding the reason that boat is going down, and it has been hiding it since spring. When you last found more water in your bilge than you left there, what did you check first? Put it in the comments. This is what Yachts and Boats covers. Subscribe so you catch what comes next. When a boat goes down in its slip, the first sentence out of the owner's mouth is always about the pump. What happened to the bilge pump? Boat US, which has been underwriting marine policies and publishing its own claims analysis for decades, says flatly that this is the wrong question. Rick Wilson has run boat claims there for 30 years, and his answer is 11 words long. Don't blame the bilge pump, it's been keeping the boat afloat. The right question is where the water came from, because a bilge pump does not stop a leak, it removes the evidence of one. It cycles, empties the bilge, and goes quiet again. Do that for 6 months and the boat looks dry every single time you visit it. The leak has not changed at all. The only thing that changed is that nobody can see it anymore. That arrangement runs until the float clogs or the battery goes flat. Then it ends all at once. That 4-to-1 figure is real, and it comes straight out of the Boat US claim files. It is also not your number. Boat US pulled 100 claim files on boats that sank at the dock. Across every hull type, water came in through fittings below the waterline in half of them. Rain and snow accounted for another 32%. Then they broke the outboard powerboats out on their own, and the picture changed completely. For those boats, weather was 47%. Almost half the outboard boats that went down at the dock were killed by rain or snow, and nearly every one of them had a cockpit the builder advertised as self-bailing. That is where the famous ratio comes from. It is a base boat statistic wearing a sailing jacket. There is a second Boat US figure in circulation, and it is worth knowing about. When the association went back through its claim files in 2014, the first serious review since 2006, the split came out at 69% at the dock or mooring against 31% underway. Different years and different samples, but the same direction of travel, and nobody has published a breakdown that granular since. In December 2007, Boat US ran the study nobody quotes, 100 sailboat sinkings pulled from the same claim files. Bob Adriance was the Marine Insurance Technical Director at the time, and he reported that sailboat losses split evenly down the middle, 50% in the slip, 50% underway. There was a reason for the underway half, and Adriance named it. A sailboat draws deep, so 40% of those losses came from striking something submerged, and another 16% from a broken prop shaft or strut. He pointed out that auxiliary engines on sailboats do not get run often enough, which gives corrosion the time it needs to get into the shaft. So for a sailboat, the dock is not 4 times more dangerous than the open ocean. It is exactly as dangerous. That sounds like better news than it is. Of the sailboats that went down at the dock, 44% flooded through a fitting below the waterline. Another 33% flooded through the stuffing box. Rain, the thing that kills outboard boats, caused 7%. 77% of dockside sailboat losses came through 2 pieces of hardware. Both of those are things a man can put his hand on in 20 minutes with a flashlight and a screwdriver. That is the part I keep coming back to. The ledger does not lie, which raises a harder question. If the leak was that findable, how did a pump run all season without a single person working out what it was covering up? David Pascoe was a second-generation marine surveyor certified by the National Association of Marine Surveyors in 1972. Before he retired in 2012, he conducted more than 5,000 pre-purchase surveys, and he spent years investigating sinkings on behalf of insurers. He went through hundreds of claim files looking at nothing but the pumps. He also ran his own tests on the plastic deck hatches that builders sell as watertight. One of them let 12 gallons an hour through with the cover closed and the gasket in place, because the frame was thin enough to distort under load and dirt had packed in under the seal. His finding was that when a boat sank, the pump itself was almost never defective. The system around it failed first. Sludge in a dirty bilge holds the float switch in the on position, so the pump runs until it burns out or flattens the battery. A switch that was never properly secured falls onto its side and does the same thing. Oil and debris pack in under the float, so it never lifts at all. And the wire splices, mounted low in the bilge where they are easy to reach, corrode and go high resistance because they get soaked by a leak somewhere else entirely on the boat. Then there is the wiring, and this one is worse than all of it. A large number of boats are wired so that shutting off the main breaker also shuts off the bilge pumps. Pascoe found it on expensive yachts and called it an amateur mistake. Read that again slowly. The last thing a careful owner does before he locks the companionway and drives home is kill the power. On those boats, that motion kills the only system between the hull and the bottom. Kill your main breaker, kill the battery switches, then reach down and lift the float switch by hand. Does your pump still run, or did you just find out it never would? Now go back to the 44%. The fittings. Paul Stevens is a marine surveyor and a founding member of British Marine Surveyors Europe, and he went public with a warning that thousands of boats are fitted with brass seacocks below the waterline instead of bronze. Brass is a copper-zinc alloy built for household plumbing. Put it in salt water and the zinc leaches out, leaving porous copper behind. Stevens has inspected yachts where the seacocks had gone so far that they snapped off in his hands. The tell is a pink or carroty color under the surface. You find it by scraping a bright patch and looking at the metal underneath. On a lot of boats, you cannot see it at all until the fitting breaks. Desintification-resistant brass has existed for 50 years. A boat called Random Harvest sank when a skin fitting failed from exactly this. The markings that matter are stamped into the valve body. DZR and CR are the marine grades, along with the alloy codes CW602N and CZ132. If your seacock reads CW61SN or CZ122, it was made for a bathroom. Plastic is its own category. Pascoe caught 30 to 40 boats every year with cracked plastic through hulls that were in danger of sinking them, and the crack is almost always behind the outer flange, where looking at it tells you nothing. His test takes 10 seconds. Put a screwdriver blade into the hole and pry in several directions with moderate pressure. If it breaks, it was going to break anyway. He also asked the obvious question about a builder who puts $20 of plastic through hull fittings into a $100,000 boat. That was the cheap part. The stuffing box is the other 33%, and the American Boat and Yacht Council wrote a number for it. Standard P6 says a shaft seal must be built so that if it fails, no more than 2 gallons of water per minute enter the hull with the shaft still turning at low speed. 2 gallons a minute is 120 gallons an hour. That is the permitted failure. A standard that writes down how much water your boat is allowed to take on after the seal lets go is a standard that fully expects the seal to let go. Hold on to 120. It matters in about 4 minutes when it stops being the biggest number in this video and starts being the smallest one. 5,000 surveys, 200 claim files, a standards document, and it all comes down to a single comparison the owner is never shown. Every centrifugal bilge pump sold in America is rated at open flow. No hose, no lift, no resistance of any kind. The number printed on the box is what that pump does sitting in a bucket on a workbench. Rule publishes the derating for its own 2,000 gallon per hour model. At 3 feet of lift, you get about 87% of the rating. Push it to 6 feet and you are down to 70. At 9 feet, the pump delivers 55% of what the box promised, and the general rule across large pumps is that every foot of lift costs you another 5%. The Boat US Foundation put a 2,000 gallon per hour pump on a test bench at 12 volts. At 0 head, with nothing to lift against, it moved about 1,500 gallons an hour. Its advertised shutoff head was 18 feet. It reached 14. Practical Sailor Bench tested 27 pumps against 4 feet of head, 1 foot more than most manufacturers use for their own ratings. The worst performer in the entire field was the pump carrying the highest advertised number. The Atwood V625 managed 188 gallons per hour at 12.2 volts. Now put a real sailboat around it. Pascoe measured the standard installation as a pump sitting 3 feet below the waterline in the keel sump with a discharge riser of at least 24 inches to stop the sea siphoning straight back in. 5 feet of combined lift before you count a single bend of hose, and every 10 feet of horizontal run adds the resistance of another foot on top. At that height, the pump has lost more than half of what it was sold as. So, the honest figure for the pump in your bilge is somewhere under 1,000 gallons an hour. Now, the other side of the ledger. A fitting 1.5 inches across, 3 feet below the waterline, passes roughly 2,798 gallons of water every hour. That is not a guess. It is Torricelli's theorem, the same arithmetic an engineer uses to size any orifice, run with the standard coefficient for a sharp-edged hole. The label promised 2,000. The installation delivers under 1,000 on its best day, and the sea coming through a hole the size of a golf ball arrives at nearly 3 times that. The pump never had a chance. The number on the box was measured in a bucket, and your boat is not a bucket. The math is not subtle. There are 2 ways to read this, and I do not think the argument is settled. Boat US reads it as attention. Visit the boat, inspect every fitting and hose twice a season, and use a buddy system if you cannot get down to the slip yourself. Their own study guide puts the repair cost of a boat that has been underwater, even briefly, at about 40% of its value. Pascoe read the same claim files and reached somewhere colder. He cited an industry survey finding that 64% of boat builders had nobody on staff trained in design, and argued the main reason boats sink is poor design and cheap materials, not a lazy owner. 2 men, 1 archive, 2 answers. Neither disputes the list of things you can do this weekend. Test the master switch against the pump. Scrape a bright patch on every seacock and look for pink, then read the alloy code stamped on the valve body. Pry each plastic through hull with a screwdriver. Put 2 stainless clamps on every hose below the waterline. Check your bilge discharge has an 18-inch riser and never accept less than 12. Pump the head hard, stop, leave the handle up, and watch the bowl. If water keeps arriving, the fix is a vented loop 8 to 12 inches above the waterline at full heel, fitted between the pump and the bowl, and close the seacocks in winter. Water that freezes inside an open seacock holds the boat up as long as the ice lasts. The boat sinks on the thaw. None of this reaches a federal statistic. The Coast Guard verified 3,887 recreational boating incidents in 2024 across more than 11.6 million registered vessels, but an incident only counts when somebody dies, disappears, needs more than first aid, loses the vessel, or files $2,000 in damage. A boat that goes down quietly in a slip is settled as a private insurance claim and never enters the record. Pascoe put it plainly. The number is unknown because no agency keeps it. Every figure here came out of an insurer's own files. The bill arrives regardless. Salvage on a 30-footer starts around $8,000 before anyone opens the engine, and federal law makes the registered owner pay for removal no matter why it sank. That does not move to the marina because the boat was in their slip. Now go back to that ABYC figure one last time. 2 gallons a minute from a failed shaft seal, which is 120 gallons an hour, and a working pump beats that without effort. The standard drew its line at precisely the point where the pump still wins. Every fitting failure in that 44% sits on the far side of that line, and no standard anywhere puts a number on those. That is the whole thing. The industry wrote down the failure a pump can survive and left the failure it cannot survive unmeasured, unrated, and printed on nobody's box, which is why the claim files cannot answer the last question. If 77% of these losses come through 2 pieces of hardware and both are checkable in an afternoon, why is that number not moved in 20 years? Once you understand that the figure on the box was measured in a bucket, you start reading every spec sheet in the chandlery differently, and you start noticing how many of them were written by people counting on you never doing the arithmetic. That is what Yachts and Boats does. Subscribe so you catch the next one.